Hello. Welcome to Prime Time with Next Level Prime. This is actually episode number 3 of a monthly series where we talk about all things Next Level Prime. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Rakers, Chief Medical Officer at Next Level. I'm a family medicine physician and I have been with Next Level for almost 9 years, and I have had the pleasure of managing the Next Level Prime program since it launched a little over 2 years ago. As a reminder, and for our new listeners, Prime is an advanced primary care model. We contract with employers, which allows employees and dependents to have access to unlimited healthcare services at Next Level. We have a virtual care platform as well as a large network of physical locations in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Beaumont. And we include primary care, preventive care, chronic disease management, urgent care, health coaching, and the focus of today's discussion, which is emotional wellness coaching or counseling services. We also include nurse care navigators in the program, most common lab tests, routine vaccines, and all of this is at no cost to the patient. So no copays, no deductibles, and no surprise bills. Today, I am thrilled to have Alivia Elovich, licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach for the Next Level Prime program, here with me today. So welcome, Alivia.
Hello. Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Taking some time out of your busy day, seeing our patients. So let's just start off. Tell me a little bit about, the emotional wellness coaching program for Prime. What is it? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So, emotional wellness coaching, I typically tell clients, it's kind of a fancy term for therapy or counseling. However, it is more short term and a little bit more succinct. That's why we call it coaching. So, we're able to offer 12 free sessions to folks per calendar year. And so, we usually try to focus on one or two issues that's going on with the client. And so that's why we call it coaching. It's really just kind of a space for you to share what's going on in your life, express your emotions, really just get the support that you need on a very individualized basis. So I typically tell folks who have had therapists before or counselors, like, hey, what's worked for you before? Like, what do you like in a therapist? What do you not really like? Just to make sure that it's really for their needs. And so, yeah, often while we are doing sessions, I'll check in. I'm like, hey, how was that for you? And just to kind of make sure that they're getting their needs met.
That's terrific. You know, it sounds like you have a lot to offer. What do you think some of the benefits of emotional wellness coaching are?
So many. It's hard to just name a few, but a big thing that I think is the biggest benefit for emotional wellness coaching is just having someone to talk to and someone who's listening. I think it sounds really simple, but we really don't have that a lot in our lives because we are so busy. Our partners have their own things going on, our family members have their own stuff going on. And so it's often hard to have that one-on-one uninterrupted time for you just to kind of talk about your day or share some of your feelings, some of your thoughts. So I know that really just being there in that intentional space with clients is a really big benefit. Another one that is important is just not feeling so alone. I think oftentimes people are in their head a lot. They're experiencing anxiety, they're experiencing some depression, and they feel like they're the only one that's going through it because there's a lot of shame around it, And so you often don't share, like, hey, I couldn't get out of bed this weekend, or I cannot stop worrying about driving. And so you feel really alone. And so it's nice to have someone to talk to validate, like, hey, you are not alone in that. Like, yeah, sometimes it is really hard getting out of bed, and it makes sense that you can't stop thinking about getting in a car accident because that's something that you've experienced, or you're really worried about illness because of the COVID pandemic. So just really getting that validation is huge. And the last one I'll talk about is just starting promoting self-care. So I know self-care gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes people think it's getting your nails done or buying a massage or just like spending money and gathering material things. But for this, I think it's a great step in giving yourself some self-care, spending 45 minutes on your own by yourself with someone who is there for you and you only. And so oftentimes, yeah, like we don't have that space. And so this is a great practice and a great step towards like integrating self-care into your life.
You said a couple things that really struck me. First of all, you mentioned the COVID pandemic, and you also mentioned that people feel like they're the only ones. I think and I
Mm,
hope that some of the awareness around mental health issues during and even since after the COVID pandemic, I hope people are starting to realize that they're not alone. A lot of this became highlighted and, a little more apparent and bigger focus, I would say, during and after the pandemic. So
mm,
I think also it's so terrific because people, maybe you mentioned kind of feeling, like ashamed or whatever to go, but I think having this available to them through this employer benefit where they're not having to pay, it probably makes it much, much easier for people to feel comfortable seeking care, which is terrific.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, how would a person know that emotional wellness coaching would be right for them?
So, personally, I think everyone needs a therapist. I think everyone needs a counselor. However, I might be biased.
Hmm.
But a really good indicator for you to be like, you know what, I think emotional wellness coaching is a good idea is if you're just feeling kind of intense emotions a lot, if you're feeling an increase or you feel like you have high anxiety, you're sick to your stomach a lot, your heart races, you're feeling nervous a lot, or just feeling really down. Those are big, kind of like number one indicators that emotional wellness coaching is right for you. But yeah, so a lot of us hold a lot of stress in general. And sometimes we think it's very normal to be like always kind of on edge and very like overwhelmed, but it really isn't super normal. And there are ways that you can get help and get some like relief from that. So definitely all of those things. I also find that my number one thing that people say at first is them being irritable. So people are like, my partner, my boss, like my kids have noticed I'm super irritable. And that is really because you're holding in a lot of your emotions throughout the day, throughout the week, and it's coming out in really unhealthy ways. So oftentimes so many things will happen throughout the day and you're just kind of shoving it down and like putting a smile on and maybe not sharing how you're feeling about what someone said to you, or you're not telling your partner like, hey, that really bothered me when you said that. And so then when the milk spills, you just explode and you get really irritable. You might yell, you might just like feel so overwhelmed and feel like it's an overreaction, which it may be for that specific issue, but it's because you've been really just like building up and holding on to all these things that are going on and not expressing them in healthy ways. So yeah, I think if you're just feeling a lot of discomfort in your emotions, discomfort in your body, even, that's a good indicator. It's like, all right, it can't hurt to talk to someone,
Yeah.
So
I think too, people might think, okay, well, I always, everybody has some anxiety maybe or feels like anxious or nervous from time to time. But, maybe at the point where it starts impacting, your day to day activities or, causing you to lash out, if other people are noticing, that might be a good indicator. Also, I'll just bring up too, I think from my perspective as on the physician side, anybody who has a diagnosis of a, more
mm,
of a chronic mental health issue like anxiety or depression, oftentimes too, people that get diagnosed with other chronic illnesses, a lot of the dealing and coping with that type of
yeah,
diagnosis, even diabetes and, maybe more serious long long-term issues like cancer, that sort of thing, having someone to talk through some of those new, bigger diagnoses where you have to make some lifestyle change can really, I think, help a lot. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
we talk a lot on the program about the team approach that we have in the Next Level Prime program. And I just mentioned a couple of our, more medical diagnoses that we sometimes encounter. How does the emotional wellness coach, program kind of fit in with the rest of the Prime team?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what you were talking about before, because yeah, it is a team approach. That's why I really love working at Next Level, is because everyone really values each other's different expertise to look at the whole person, and so we're able to care for our clients like very holistically and not just offer one resource. We can be like, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And so I really love that aspect of it. And it just makes it a little bit more normalized to integrate different things about ourselves. So, for instance, you're going in for a medical procedure, you're feeling nervous, and the provider's like, oh my gosh, like maybe it would be a good idea for you to talk to Olivia before your procedure or
Mhm.
before after you get this diagnosis, or maybe it'd be a good idea for you to talk with Olivia and the health coach for kind of being able to become a little bit more healthier in order to deal with some of the stuff that's going on medically. It's just a really great way to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, everything
Yeah.
medically. And so, yes, I think that is great to be a part of a team like that. Another thing that I almost always hear is I'll be working with someone and they'll be like, oh, yeah, Maylin told me to come
Mhm.
here. And like, she's had clients that have spoke about you and have really benefited from A, B, and C. And so that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Also, like often people are like, oh, I talked to Laura
Mhm.
and I'm still going to continue working with Laura, but I think it would be a good addition to also talk with you because I don't know if people know this or not, but there's just such an overlap with our physical and our mental health. And so it just makes sense to see the health coach and also see an emotional wellness coach because it's eating is emotional, exercising is emotional. And so, yeah, it just really makes sense. And it allows us to integrate and communicate with each provider just so that we're meeting the needs of our clients the best we can.
Yeah, and hopefully those warm handoffs again kind of allow people to feel a little more comfortable,
Oh,
confident
for
in,
sure.
it's reaching out and seeking care. So that's actually terrific.
Yeah.
What kind of availability is there with the emotional wellness coach program?
Good question. So it is a virtual benefit. So all the stuff that I do is either over the phone or on video, which I have seen be like really beneficial because it allows clients to access me at like weird times, like
Mhm.
during lunch or in the morning on their way to work. And even in the evening time. So it just like opens up that accessibility. Um, I know a lot of our clients have really varied schedules. Some people are on 12-hour shifts. Some people have typical 9 to 5s. And so we have made it so that we can have availability for almost everyone. My personal schedule is like Mondays and Fridays, 9 to 4. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I do 12 to 8 to help the folks who have the 9 to 5 so that we can have some of that time in the evenings. And then every other Saturday, I work 4 hours. So Saturdays aren't super popular because people are like, all right, I want to chill. I want to get my weekends in. But evening times have been really popular. And like I said, I have heard more than one time that the fact that we are virtual is really, really helpful because they can just kind of squeeze it in when they have that minute. And as we know, people are just so busy nowadays that they kind of do have to squeeze these appointments in. So that is my availability.
Yeah, I think it's key that our team kind of has varied hours, early, late, maybe some
Mhm.
weekend, even though they maybe are less popular. Having the flexibility for patients to meet you where they are and when they can is very important. So
Mhm.
accessibility is definitely one of the big barriers that we are trying to overcome here.
Yeah.
So some of the other big barriers, and we kind of talked about it, the shame and things like that associated with
Mm.
seeking out for mental health services. What are some of the stigmas that are still, out there that we can kind of talk about? How do we dispel those?
Yeah. Yeah. There are still, I mean, we've come so far, but I still think there is a lot of stigma in mental health. One of the most popular things I hear is my family and how they grew up never believed in therapy because that's for crazy people.
Mhm.
And so they never wanted to be crazy. And so therapy was just outside of the realm of possibility. And whenever I hear that, it does make me sad, but also makes me recognize like we have come really far because it is way more normalized to go to therapy. I think it's almost kind of like romanticized a little bit, like, oh, my therapist said this, or my counselor said this. But yes, I think the fact that people kind of put a label on when therapy is appropriate and when it's not is a big issue because, as I said before, I do think everyone would benefit from therapy.
Mhm.
It's just a really great place to go, have someone listen to you and validate you in a space that's just very non judgmental. And so, yeah, the fact that people only think it's for like the most extreme cases, that's not true at all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just think that that stigma that it's only for crazy people is definitely something that we need to work through. And then just I think in different cultures, different parts of the world, there is this idea that therapy isn't accessible, which it's true. It's not accessible. And I think that's what we're working on to try to do, like dispel myths. It's like, oh, it's only for rich people or
Yeah.
something like that. And we're like, you know what? Like, we're going to take that away and we're going to offer it to everyone so that people can go see someone, make it more normal, like because they don't have to pay for it, because it's
Yeah.
very easily accessible. It helps normalize it in our society. And I think that is a great thing that Next Level is doing.
Do you think there's a difference in men versus women seeking out care?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do think like it's been incredible seeing how many men have
Mhm.
signed up for the program and really been pretty hesitant at first. And then once you get them talking, like they'll talk, they get into it. But I think this idea that emotions are weak and you just have to rub some dirt in it, that is such a long-standing narrative that like
Mhm.
society continues to promote. And it's been great to provide this space that's safe, it's confidential. It also is helpful sometimes doing it on the phone because people feel more comfortable not seeing me. And yeah, so it's been a great place for men specifically to get used to sharing their emotions because I've seen it in multiple instances, like because they don't share their emotions, because they're really just like pushing it down, it often comes off as anger. It comes out with anger. It comes off with maybe more drinking than typical.
Yeah.
And it also just like prevents good communication. So yeah, definitely working on breaking down that stigma with men.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of the good stuff. What are some of the outcomes you've seen and experienced from providing this service to our members, our patients?
Yeah. So generally speaking, like some of the basic outcomes, I think, are people just kind of being more aware and comfortable with emotions.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, when we feel really sad and we're crying, we think something's wrong, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening? Something must be wrong. This isn't right." And so, a big outcome is like accepting that emotions are part of being a human and they're not wrong, they're normal. You should be crying from time to time. You should feel angry. You should feel irritable, but it's just learning to accept them and manage them in healthy ways. Another thing, and I won't get too specific, but another thing that has really been helpful for a lot of clients is communication with their partners or friends or coworkers. A lot of times we're taught not to communicate our thoughts and feelings because they're a burden or they don't matter or they're going to make someone mad. And we see because of that, they push down their feelings and then it bubbles up in ways and can make it really kind of just toxic and like you can say really hurtful things, do hurtful stuff. And it just becomes a big problem. So a big thing that I like to work on with clients is first to let's process, okay, like something happened with you and your partner, say. Let's process how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and then how can we effectively communicate it back to your partner so that like the conversation doesn't just like boom, butt heads. You guys can actually communicate really effectively. People may have heard this before, but like working on I statements. So instead of saying, why don't you ever help me? You're so lazy. Like I have to do everything. Trying to kind of shift that conversation and be like, hey, I'm feeling so overwhelmed because there's so much to do. Like, is there anything we can do to work together to kind of make our to-do list a little shorter? And so when they're able to do that and kind of start from that, like, oh, I'm feeling really sad because you said this. Yeah, it can be really, really helpful. And then another little thing that has happened before is oftentimes partners can kind of just be like two ships passing in the night and they don't communicate well about who has soccer, who's making dinner, and then it just becomes like people get angry, people are annoyed, they think they can like read each other's minds. So a really helpful thing is to kind of have like a family meeting once a week to be able to be like, all right, who's making dinner on Monday, who's taking Robert to soccer, so that everyone can be on the same page, they can work collaboratively and be a little less maybe like resentful or frustrated.
It sounds like a lot of good practical tips that really help, the outcome to be, positive and beneficial to the patient. So that's actually terrific. Tell me about emotional wellness coaching benefits to family members. What about spouses, kiddos? How do we handle that?
Yeah. So as long as your family members are in like your insurance plan, eligibility. Sorry, that word just like left my brain. They have access to Prime benefits. I will say that I love working with kids and I think it's wonderful. However, because we're working virtually, it's easiest and most effective if they're 12 years of age or older to work with, just because it's hard to focus. It's hard to build rapport with kids via video or phone if they're any younger. I typically, if I am working with kids, I like to meet with the parent first just to kind of get information and kind of things that they want to be working on. And then I'll meet with the kids with the parents or without, really kind of whatever works for everyone. And then we'll just kind of see how it goes from there. I typically don't do couples right now. And so it is more individual therapy. And so I've seen that work pretty well in terms of like if you're having issues with your partner, kind of working individually, and then you guys can come together and figure out things on your own. But yeah, typically just individuals.
I would think with little younger kids too, oftentimes it's helping coach the parents really through helping them deal with whatever the emotional, outbursts or things that are going on with the child. It's more coaching the parents how to handle and deal with those situations. Probably very helpful.
Yeah.
Terrific. Tell me, we deal with employers, and that's how our client is the employer, and then the patients are the employees and the dependents. But what should the employer know about our emotional wellness coach program?
To use it. I think it's so beneficial for employers because, as you know, your employees are stressed,
Mhm.
they're anxious, either from work or from home. And to give them a free and accessible place to take care of themselves, I think is so rare and such a huge like benefit and importance to show that your employees that you care about them. I think everyone has probably seen employees who are overworked or stressed from home stuff bring it to work and cause maybe some issues. It comes out in unhealthy ways, whether it's outbursts or just talking to their patients rudely, And I think if you were able to offer them, hey, like, why don't you talk to someone once a week to try to vent or find tips to manage that stress, it could really benefit just like employee work satisfaction, and just like their performance at work. I also think it's a great way to help communication, to help take care of themselves. Promoting self care is rare for workplaces. And so this is such a great space for you to be able to promote self care in a way that's accessible, like I said. Also, normalizing mental health. I often hear like my clients will be like, "Oh my gosh, my coworker said that you were great, and so I wanted to come and talk to you." And it's
Helpful.
that right? It's just so cool that people are talking about their mental health, they're talking about their emotions, and so it's normalizing mental health and it's helping take away that stigma that has been built up for so long. Yeah, and it's just kind of repetitive, but I feel like there's always so much shame in terms of feeling your emotions. And so we really need to work on that as a whole. And so being able to be like, hey, employees, you have emotions, you have feelings, you have hardships. Like, I understand that. And I'm going to give you an actual concrete tool to work on that. So,
I bet too, I don't know that we've necessarily prevented any specific incident, but workplace violence is such a hot topic right now.
mm,
And I think just fostering an environment at your workplace where you do acknowledge mental health issues and give people the space to seek care and give them an easy way to do that, I think it can only help that as well. So reducing or hopefully eliminating workplace violence by providing
yeah.
services to people.
Mhm.
Well, all terrific information. This has been great. I want to kind of close with your most practical emotional wellness tips that we can, share with our listeners here today.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep it simple because I think oftentimes we think mental health is really complex, but it really starts from like basic things. And so a big thing to look out or to do is to sleep.
Mm,
Start with your sleep. You need 6 to 8 hours of sleep if possible, because not sleeping really affects your mood and then kind of snowballs into other things throughout your day, such as eating things that make your body feel good is so important. Oftentimes, when we're really tired, we'll kind of just grab something quick and we'll grab something that has a lot of caffeine in it to drink. And those things mess with your mood. They
we're not
really
supposed
do.
to do that.
I know. Yeah. Sorry, you're not.
I know.
But it's really important if you get that adequate amount of sleep, you can make good decisions on eating. I'm a huge proponent of balance. Like, of course, eat cookies and eat whatever feels good to you, but just make sure you're being intentional about it and being like, like, how does this burger make me feel? How does this sandwich make me feel? And starting to eat foods that make you feel good. This one is probably going to be not super popular, but reducing your phone use,
Mm,
that is major. And I need to take that into I need to say it in the mirror to myself. But I have seen such major changes and folks who reduce their time on their phone.
yeah.
Um, we think that it helps calm us down and unwind, but in reality, it kind of does make us more anxious and depressed because of the things that we're watching, because of the addictive nature to it. And so if you can reduce, that would be huge. And then the last thing is get outside. There's such natural endorphins in being outside, even if it's for 5 minutes. But if every day you can get outside and take a deep breath, that is huge for your mental health. So if you're able to work on those 4 things, I know they sound simple, but they are kind of hard.
They sound hard to me.
Yeah, if you're able to work on those 4 things for a week, try it for a week. I think you would see massive changes in your mental health.
Yeah. All good tips. I'm going to go try
Yes.
to keep my phone down.
I know. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so very much, Alivia, for joining next Prime Time today with Next Level Prime. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you all next time.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye-bye.